Have you ever noticed how betrayal doesn't walk through the front door? It doesn't shout, it doesn't slam, it whispers, it hides behind a sudden smile, a friendly tone, or a silence that feels heavier than it should. At first, you think nothing of it. But what if I told you that the moment someone shifts too quickly, asks too much, or goes quiet when it matters most, it isn't coincidence, it's calculation. It's like a chess game where your opponent doesn't attack your king directly. Instead, they move pieces in ways so subtle you don't even notice the trap being built around you. One move at a time, until suddenly you're cornered. Or think of a storm that doesn't start with thunder. It begins with a stillness, a false calm, lulling you into comfort before the lightning strikes. That's how hidden intentions work. They're quiet, calculated, and always dangerous. Because while you're busy trusting the words, they're moving through the actions you can't see. And here's the truth. Those who plan against you don't always show hostility. Sometimes they show flattery. Sometimes they show agreement. Sometimes they show nothing at all. But beneath it, every move has purpose. So how do you recognize the signs? Without paranoia, without overthinking, but with the clear-eyed calm of a Stoic. Stay until the end, because once you learn to spot these behaviors, you'll never be blindsided again. Let's get started. Number 1. They suddenly act too friendly. Let's talk about one of the clearest red flags that often gets overlooked. When someone suddenly shifts from distant or cold to overly warm and friendly overnight. On the surface, it feels flattering. You might think, wow, this person has finally started appreciating me. But when the change comes too quickly, without any real reason, it's often not sincerity. It's strategy. People rarely flip their behavior out of nowhere. If they ignored you yesterday but are suddenly showering you with compliments today, chances are they're not being genuine. They're planning something. Here's the truth. When someone suddenly acts too friendly, it's not about connection. It's about positioning. They may be trying to soften you up, to lower your guard, or to make sure you see them as an ally while they're actually working on something behind the scenes. This kind of behavior is manipulation disguised as kindness. True warmth develops consistently over time. But fake warmth often comes fast, heavy, and unbalanced, like someone trying to buy your trust all at once. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Epictetus once said, "Flattery is the disguise of manipulation." A Stoic would remind us to always watch the intention behind the action. Flattery and sudden friendliness are often less about who you are and more about what they want. If someone's words don't align with their past behavior, don't just take it at face value. Ask yourself, why now? What changed? The Stoic approach isn't to become paranoid, but to remain watchful, calm, and not swayed by sudden shifts in others' behavior. Let me share a story. A man I know, let's call him David, had a co-worker who never paid him much attention. For months, this co-worker was dismissive, barely acknowledging David's presence in meetings. Then, 1 week before an important promotion decision, everything changed. Suddenly, this co-worker was overly nice, inviting David to lunch, praising his work in front of the boss, even sending friendly texts after hours. At first, David thought maybe they'd finally come around. But then he realized this new friendliness wasn't about him at all. It was about positioning. The co-worker wanted to align with David just long enough to use him as leverage during the promotion talks, to appear like a team player. Once the decision was made, the friendliness disappeared as quickly as it came. So how do you handle someone who suddenly acts too friendly? First, don't get carried away. Enjoy kindness, but don't blindly accept it when it doesn't match their history. Second, observe their patterns. Are they only friendly when they need something? Does their kindness fade the moment the situation changes? And finally, keep your guard steady. Accept politeness, but don't hand over trust to someone whose behavior feels inconsistent. At the end of the day, genuine friendship and respect are built over time, not overnight. If someone suddenly flips from cold to overly warm, remind yourself that actions speak louder than sudden words. A Stoic mindset means staying calm, aware, and discerning, because the moment you stop chasing appearances, you'll see the truth hidden beneath them. Number 2, they plant doubts in subtle ways. Let's talk about one of the most manipulative tactics someone can use, planting doubts in small, almost invisible ways. It's not always a direct attack. They won't openly say, "You're wrong," or "You can't do this." Instead, they'll drop tiny phrases that sound harmless on the surface, but chip away at your confidence. They'll say things like, "Are you sure about that?" Or, "Well, that seems risky, but if you think it'll work." These aren't just casual comments, they're seeds. And if you let them take root, they can grow into hesitation, second-guessing, and self-doubt. Here's the truth. When someone constantly sows subtle doubts, they're not trying to help you. They're trying to weaken how others see you, and even how you see yourself. They know direct criticism can backfire, so instead, they lace their words with uncertainty. They'll question your choices, your decisions, and sometimes even your character, but always in a way that lets them deny any ill intent. And that's the danger, because it's not open hostility, it's disguised sabotage. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Falsehood hides itself in half-truths." In other words, manipulation often cloaks itself in things that sound reasonable. Maybe their doubts come wrapped in fake concern, or presented as just giving advice. But the Stoic way teaches us to look deeper. If someone's words consistently leave you feeling smaller, weaker, or less certain, then you must recognize the pattern. This isn't truth, it's a tactic. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Emily, once worked with a colleague who mastered this technique. Whenever Emily shared ideas in meetings, this colleague never disagreed directly. Instead, he would tilt his head and say, "That's interesting, but do you think management will take you seriously with that approach?" Or he'd ask, "Are you sure you're ready to handle something that big?" He never outright told her she couldn't succeed, but his constant underhanded comments left her second-guessing herself. Over time, Emily noticed that others in the office began echoing his doubts. It wasn't just about her confidence anymore. It was about the image he had planted in everyone's mind, and that was his goal all along. So how do you deal with people who plant doubts in subtle ways? First, recognize the pattern. Once you see their tactic, it loses its power. Second, separate intent from effect. Ask yourself, is this genuine advice meant to help me grow, or is it doubt meant to slow me down? And finally, anchor yourself in your own clarity. The Stoics remind us that no one else's words define our path unless we allow them to. Hold firm to your vision, and don't let half-truths steer you off course. At the end of the day, subtle doubts are just disguised attacks. They may sound harmless, but they're designed to chip away at your confidence brick by brick. A Stoic mindset means staying centered, calm, and unshaken, because when you see through the disguise, their words lose their weight, and you keep moving forward with strength. If you found this valuable, hit like and subscribe for more powerful insights. Number 3. They ask too many questions about you. Let's talk about another subtle warning sign. When someone seems overly curious about your life, asking questions that go beyond what's normal. Now, curiosity in itself is natural. Friends ask questions, colleagues show interest, and people want to connect. But there's a difference between healthy curiosity and probing into details that don't concern them. When someone presses too much, especially about private matters, it may not be because they care. It may be because they're collecting information. Here's the truth. When someone keeps probing into areas that don't affect them, it's not about connection, it's about control. They may ask about your finances, your relationships, your next career move, or even personal struggles. On the surface, it looks like they're showing interest, but deep down, they're building a map of your weaknesses. The more you share, the more they know how to position themselves around you, or worse, against you. And once you start noticing, you'll realize these questions rarely lead to genuine support. Instead, they lead to subtle judgment, gossip, or manipulation later on. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes essential. Seneca warned, "Guard your speech, for not all who listen are friends." The Stoics understood that words have power, and once you let them go, you can't control how they're used. Not everyone who listens has good intentions. Some people listen not to understand you, but to use what you reveal for their own gain. That's why the wise keep their speech measured, sharing openly only with those who have proven loyalty, and keeping guarded with those who haven't. Let me share a story. A man I know, let's call him Michael, had a co-worker who always seemed too curious. At first, it felt nice. This co-worker asked about Michael's family, his weekend plans, even his financial goals. Michael thought it was just friendly small talk, so he opened up. But over time, he noticed something strange. Bits of his personal life began circulating through the office, things he never shared with anyone else. And worse, his co-worker would subtly bring up those details in meetings to make him look unprepared or distracted. Michael realized the friendly questions weren't about building a bond, they were about gathering ammunition. So how do you handle people who ask too many questions? First, notice the intent. Are they asking out of genuine care, or does it feel like they're fishing for details? Second, set boundaries. You don't owe anyone explanations about your personal life. It's perfectly fine to keep answers vague or redirect the conversation. And finally, practice selective disclosure. Share openly with those who've earned your trust, but stay guarded with those who haven't proven themselves. At the end of the day, not all curiosity is genuine. Some questions are asked to understand you, while others are asked to use you. A Stoic mindset means speaking with clarity, but also with caution, recognizing that your words can become tools in someone else's hands. When you guard your speech, you protect your peace, and no one can use your own life against you. Number 4, they go silent when you need support. Let's talk about one of the most painful signs that someone might be planning against you, their silence in the moments you need them most. When times are good, they're around. They might even pretend to be supportive, blending in as if they care. But the moment you actually face difficulty or unfair treatment, they vanish. They don't defend you. They don't step in. They don't even acknowledge what you're going through. And that silence? It's not just absence, it's intent. Here's the truth. Lack of defense at the right time is itself an attack. People who truly care about you don't disappear when your back is against the wall. Even if they can't fix the problem, they make their presence felt. But those who stay quiet when they could have spoken up are revealing something important. They're not neutral, they're complicit. Their silence doesn't just protect themselves, it exposes that deep down, they don't mind watching you fall. And often, it means they've already chosen a side, even if they never admit it out loud. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Epictetus once said, "Silence can betray as much as speech." The Stoics understood that actions and inactions carry equal weight. What someone refuses to say tells you as much as what they openly declare. A person's silence in a moment of truth is a mirror. It reflects their true loyalty. And when you see someone go quiet while you're under attack, that reflection becomes impossible to ignore. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Jennifer, worked in an office where one of her colleagues spread a false rumor about her. It wasn't just unkind, it was damaging to her reputation. Now, Jennifer had a few friends in that office, people she thought would have her back. But when the rumor spread, something shocking happened. Those friends went silent. They didn't speak up. They didn't correct the lie. They acted like they hadn't heard anything at all. Later, Jennifer realized it wasn't that they didn't know what to say. It was that they didn't want to protect her. Their silence was their decision, and in that silence, their true loyalties were exposed. So how do you deal with people who go silent when you need support? First, take note of who shows up and who doesn't. Difficult moments always reveal the real circle around you. Second, don't beg for loyalty. If someone needs to be convinced to defend you, they were never truly in your corner. And finally, draw your boundaries. Value the people who stand beside you when it's inconvenient, not just when it's easy. At the end of the day, silence speaks volumes. If someone cannot or will not stand with you when you need them most, that's not neutrality, that's betrayal. A Stoic mindset reminds us not to waste energy on those who reveal their disloyalty through inaction. Better to walk with a few who defend you in silence than to surround yourself with many who stay silent in your defense. If you've watched the video this far, don't forget to leave a comment with a "thank God" and give it a like if you enjoyed the content. Your support means a lot and motivates me to keep creating more interesting videos. I hope you find inspiration in them and that we continue learning together. Thank you for your support. Number 5. They pretend to agree but delay action. Let's talk about one of the cleverest tactics people use when they don't want to openly oppose you, pretending to agree while secretly stalling. On the surface, they look like an ally. They nod their head in meetings, say, "That's a great idea," and even assure you that they're on board. But behind the scenes, they drag their feet. They delay responses, postpone decisions, and create small obstacles that keep your plans from moving forward. It's not confrontation, it's sabotage disguised as cooperation. Here's the truth. When someone constantly agrees in words, but resists in action, they're not supporting you. They're blocking you. Their goal isn't to argue with you openly, because open disagreement would expose them. Instead, they choose the quieter path of obstruction. They appear agreeable, so you won't suspect them, but their lack of follow-through is what does the damage. They know that slowing things down can be just as effective as stopping them outright. This is where Stoic wisdom gives clarity. Seneca once warned, "Beware the one who smiles yet hinders." The Stoics understood that the real test of loyalty isn't in what people say, it's in what they do. Words are cheap, smiles can be faked, but actions, or the lack of them, reveal true intent. If someone consistently delays, ignores, or quietly blocks progress while pretending to agree, you don't need their speech to know the truth. Their behavior says it all. Let me share a story. A man I know, let's call him Richard, was leading a team project at his company. One of his colleagues always seemed enthusiastic in meetings. Every time Richard presented a new step, this colleague would nod eagerly and say, "Absolutely, let's do it." But when it came time to actually act, things were different. Emails went unanswered, deadlines were missed, and progress stalled. At first, Richard thought it was bad time management, but over time, he noticed a pattern. Every delay seemed to happen at crucial moments that mattered most for the project's success. And each delay made Richard look less effective as a leader. Eventually, Richard realized the truth. His colleague wasn't careless. He was intentionally stalling to weaken Richard's leadership, all while pretending to be supportive in front of the group. So how do you deal with someone who pretends to agree but delays action? First, stop judging by words alone. Pay attention to consistency between what they say and what they do. Second, set clear expectations. When someone agrees, pin down specific deadlines and responsibilities. Vagueness is where manipulators thrive. And finally, don't rely on those who prove unreliable. If a person consistently fails to act on their promises, adjust your expectations. Trust actions, not affirmations. At the end of the day, pretending to agree while stalling is just another form of deception. It's not the open enemy you see coming. It's the silent obstacle that slows you from behind. A Stoic mindset helps you remain calm, objective, and discerning. Don't be swayed by smiles or nods. Measure people by their follow-through. Because true allies don't just agree in words, they act in ways that move you forward. Number 6. They spread concerns about you to others. Let's talk about one of the most dangerous tactics people use when they're quietly planning against you: spreading concerns behind your back. They rarely come out openly and attack you. Instead, they mask their criticism as worry. They'll say things like, "I'm just concerned about them. I hope they can handle this." Or, "I really like them, but do you think they're making the best decisions?" On the surface, it sounds like care, but the truth is, it's a slow and calculated way of poisoning your image. Here's the truth. When someone phrases criticism as concern, they're trying to damage you without being held accountable. Direct attacks can be challenged, but concerns are slippery. They give the speaker the ability to sound kind and thoughtful while planting doubt in the minds of others. And the more people hear those concerns, the more they start to question you, even if you've done nothing wrong. Over time, these little whispers create an atmosphere where your reputation feels shaky, and that's exactly what the manipulator wants. This is where Stoic wisdom steps in. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The tongue of a traitor is sharper than any dagger." What he meant is simple. Words, especially deceptive ones, can wound more deeply than open attacks. A dagger can cut the body, but a traitor's tongue can destroy trust, credibility, and relationships. And the worst part, the damage spreads quietly, often before you even realize it's happening. That's why the Stoic mindset urges us to judge people not by how they speak about us directly, but by how they speak when we're not in the room. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Sarah, was up for a leadership role at her company. She had worked hard, proven her ability, and had the support of her team. But one of her colleagues, someone she thought was neutral, started pulling a different strategy. Instead of openly questioning her, he began talking to others in hushed tones. "I really like Sarah, but don't you think she might be too emotional for that role?" Or, "I just hope she won't burn out if she takes this on." These didn't sound like insults, they sounded like concern. But slowly, doubts began creeping into the team. When promotion time came, Sarah's candidacy wasn't as strong as it should have been, all because someone weaponized concern against her. So how do you handle people who spread concerns behind your back? First, listen carefully to patterns. If you hear phrases repeated by multiple people that you never said or did, track where they're coming from. Second, confront indirectly. You don't always need to accuse them directly, but you can clarify the truth with those around you. I've heard some questions about this. Let me clear things up. And finally, reduce your reliance on those who hide behind worry. People who want to see you rise will defend you in your absence. People who want to see you fall will quietly whisper doubts. At the end of the day, a false friend's concern is often more dangerous than an enemy's attack. A Stoic mindset reminds us that we can't control what others whisper, but we can control our clarity, our integrity, and our calm. Let your consistent actions speak louder than their false concern, because in time, truth outlasts every whispered lie. Number 7. They compete in shadows, not openly. Let's talk about one of the most dangerous forms of hidden rivalry, the kind that happens in the shadows. Some people will compete with you directly, and at least that's clear. You know who they are, you know what they want, and you can prepare. But others? They don't challenge you out in the open. They undermine quietly, making moves behind your back, so you never see the blow coming. On the surface, they might even look supportive, but in the background, they're setting up obstacles, spreading whispers, or aligning themselves to weaken your position without ever looking like an enemy. Here's the truth. Shadow competition is often more destructive than open rivalry. When someone attacks you directly, you can defend yourself. But when they operate quietly, you're left confused, drained, and blindsided by the outcomes. They may pretend to cheer for you in public while secretly hoping for your failure. They may withhold important information, delay key opportunities, or quietly discredit you to those in power. The goal isn't to challenge you head-on, it's to slowly weaken your foundation so you never even realize the damage until it's too late. This is where Stoic wisdom helps us stay alert. Epictetus once said, "The enemy that hides is more dangerous than the one that attacks." The Stoics understood that hidden malice often carries the sharpest edge. An open enemy can be prepared for, but a hidden rival can corrode your peace of mind in ways you don't notice until the harm is done. That's why a Stoic mindset teaches us to observe patterns, not words, consistency, not appearances. What people do when no spotlight is on them says far more than what they claim publicly. Let me share a story. A man I know, let's call him Thomas, was working on a major project at his firm. He had a colleague who always acted friendly and encouraging during meetings. "Great idea, Thomas. I think you've got this," he would say in front of everyone. But behind closed doors, he was feeding doubts to management. "Thomas's plan is solid, but I'm not sure he can handle the pressure." He also forgot to pass along crucial updates and withheld resources that Thomas needed to meet deadlines. By the time Thomas discovered what was happening, his credibility had already been damaged. The colleague never once openly opposed him. He competed in the shadows and almost succeeded in undercutting him without ever lifting a visible hand. So how do you handle shadow competitors? First, pay attention to outcomes, not appearances. If someone constantly praises you publicly, but things always seem to go wrong behind the scenes, connect the dots. Second, protect your information. Don't overshare your strategies or struggles with those you don't fully trust. And finally, Strengthen your reputation through consistency. When your work speaks for itself, shadow competitors have less room to twist the truth. At the end of the day, a hidden rival is more dangerous than an open enemy. A Stoic mindset means staying calm, observant, and resilient, refusing to be lulled by empty praise while watching for actions that reveal the truth. Remember, the enemy in the shadows may be silent, but their patterns always expose them, if you're willing to see. If you believe this video can help others, give it a like. It helps the YouTube algorithm show it to more people. And don't forget to subscribe for more awesome content coming your way. Share your thoughts in the comments. I will definitely reply. Number 8. They act offended without cause. Let's talk about one of the most manipulative tactics people use, feigning offense when there's no real reason. This isn't genuine hurt or misunderstanding. It's a strategy. By pretending to be offended, they flip the script. Suddenly, you're on the defensive, scrambling to explain yourself, while they get to play the role of the victim. And once they've positioned themselves as offended, they gain the moral high ground, giving them cover to criticize you, question your intentions, or attack your character while appearing innocent. Here's the truth. When someone acts offended without cause, they're not protecting their dignity. They're manufacturing an excuse. It's a tactic designed to shift power in the conversation. Instead of addressing the real issue, they invent injury to put you in the wrong. This allows them to gain sympathy from others, to paint you as insensitive or aggressive, and to justify their own hidden hostility. And once you start apologizing for something you didn't even do, they've already won. This is where Stoic wisdom cuts through the deception. Seneca wrote, "He who invents injury prepares his excuse." The Stoics understood that false offense is rarely about the words spoken, it's about the agenda behind them. A person who looks for offense where none exists is showing you their strategy. They're preparing justification for actions they already intended to take. A Stoic response is not to get tangled in their drama, but to calmly recognize the tactic and stay grounded in truth. Let me share a story. A man I know, let's call him Daniel, was working on a team project. During a meeting, he casually suggested a different approach to solving a problem. One of his colleagues immediately acted offended, saying, "So, are you saying my idea was stupid?" Daniel was stunned. He hadn't said that at all. But suddenly the room shifted. He was on the defensive, trying to clarify that he never insulted anyone. Later, Daniel realized this wasn't genuine offense. It was calculated. That colleague wanted to undermine him and cast doubt on his professionalism. By pretending to be insulted, the colleague managed to turn the group's attention away from the idea itself and onto Daniel's supposed tone. It wasn't about truth, it was about control. So how do you deal with people who act offended without cause? First, don't over-apologize. Clarify your intentions calmly, but don't fall into the trap of endless explanations. Second, stick to facts. Instead of defending your character, redirect to the substance of what was said. And finally, watch for patterns. If someone repeatedly plays the offended card, you can be sure it's less about feelings and more about manipulation. At the end of the day, false offense is just another mask for hidden agendas. A Stoic mindset reminds us to stay steady, not letting exaggerated emotions pull us off balance. Because the one who invents injury may win sympathy for a moment, but in the long run, truth always outlasts pretense. If you found this valuable, hit like and subscribe for more powerful insights.